Hi, everyone. We're back, and we have Kate again. Kate is so kindly doing another session with us, and what's amazing is that she's actually using her tool, Pitch, to lead this presentation. So Kate Donahue, she's the head of product marketing at Pitch, and she has taken Pitch from private beta to global launch. And today, she is going to be using this tool, Pitch, to take you through how to turn a waitlist into a relationship. Don't forget, leave your questions in the chat and we'll answer them at the end of the session. Thank you so much, Kate. Take it away.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. As mentioned, I'm Kate. I lead product marketing at Pitch. Many of you probably don't know us just yet. So Pitch, we're building uncompromisingly good presentation software for teams. After a year in private beta, we've most recently, October 20th, finally launched to the world. This is what the past year for us has looked like. We just exited a long beta where we went from onboarding every team individually. If you're in the last session, you'll have heard a little bit more about that, starting with 100 teams, leading into more than 25,000 teams by the time we launched. Last fall, when we were getting ready to kick off our beta, we had three main objectives that we needed to figure out. So who are we really targeting? It means understanding our high expectation customer, the main personas we would want to target, but also things like really figuring out product messaging that would be resonant. We wanted to understand what they need from us, what our users need from us. So both how our current offering appealed to them, but also using early feedback from our beta users to validate and further shape our roadmap. We also wanted to understand blockers to adoption here so that we could work to address them through changing or adjusting our messaging, figuring out additional materials that we could help to educate and inform users on ways that we were approaching things a little bit differently. And we also wanted to understand how can we drive their success. So things like figuring out what are the top use cases for Pitch, how can those lead to team adoption, and then gathering examples of how early users were seeing success in advancing themselves, their ideas, or their business with Pitch. We also wanted to understand things like ease of use. So how can we drive their success by giving them all the tools they need to get on board successfully and to help convince their teams to adopt a new piece of software, which I think we all know is not the easiest thing to do. So as I mentioned, we started off slow. We had 100 teams that we wanted to start with for our first phase of our beta. With that, we knew that we weren't going to have necessarily the product analytics we needed to really drive decision making. So we were going to have to take a more qualitative approach with conversations over hard data. During this phase of our beta, every new user was onboarded by me or someone from the community support team. And yeah, we used our Typeform surveys to really craft and customize those conversations and those onboardings for our new users. Before going further, I do want to pause and introduce a concept here. So this actually drove a lot of the thinking on how we structured our beta. It's Robert Cialdini's 6 Principles of Influence. If you haven't read the book, Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion, I think it's a good read. It is, at the minimum, the literal only thing I remember from grad school. So when we look at these 6 principles of influence, there's reciprocity, the idea that we feel compelled to return favors, the idea of scarcity, authority, and social proof. So like how we make decisions by looking at those around us, principle of liking, and then consistency, where people want to be consistent to the previous commitments they've made. I know some people balk at the word influence or influencer these days, but I think it's really important when you're running a beta to keep these principles in mind. You're essentially asking people to take extra time out of their day to learn, relearn, do real world work in a product that is not always going to work as expected. And on top of that, you want them to email you with feedback, hop on calls, report bugs. So you really need to understand every arsenal in your toolkit to help people feel like there's value in that participation. Within the early stage of our beta, we really kind of focused on these 4 principles in particular. With scarcity being just the waitlist in general, trying to really form these meaningful relationships up front, reciprocity with giving people early access to a beta that they knew that others wanted to be a part of, and taking the time to onboard them. People felt more compelled to be generous with their time, participate in feedback calls, report bugs. And then in consistency, there's something to be said when you think of yourself as a beta user, as an early adopter, when you've stated that you'd be interested in providing feedback, people want to be consistent with that idea of self. So one of the reasons I'm naturally being asked to speak here today, everything in our beta, started with a survey. So it was front loaded into our waitlist experience. Here is what it looked like back in the day. So we were inspired by brands like Superhuman, Journal, amongst others, who put waitlists or put surveys up front in the waitlisting process to conduct market research and also kind of pre-qualify their users. The questions we asked were easy to answer, mostly multiple choice, but they gave us a really powerful way to think about the people interested in pitch and to organize our overall beta. So I don't think anybody actually loves filling out surveys or being on waitlist. And we, understood that this could potentially reduce the total size of our waitlist if we added a little bit of friction. But we felt like there were a few important reasons to do this. First, understanding the types of people naturally interested in pitch. On the back of that, we also wanted to be able to prioritize beta invites based on the types of users we thought we could best serve. Ultimately, we do want pitch to be a product that everyone can benefit from, but between being earlier in our product life cycle and between trying to have a clear perspective on an early first audience, being able to segment our waitlist became really handy. We also wanted to encourage people to take the first step in starting a relationship with us. And a little bit of this kind of going back to that consistency rule. Surveys take time to fill out. It's a commitment to reveal all of this information about yourself. But when you do that, it signals interest. And we knew that, we could tap into that commitment and turn it into a more fruitful relationship down the line. And then, of course, there's always the idea of being able to build buzz. People want what they can't have what they can't have right away. While it wasn't a primary consideration, we'd be remiss not to mention that this can serve us from a marketing perspective as well, not just by communicating exclusivity, but also you start to within the survey get a sense of, okay, what is pitch building? How will this actually help me long term? And maybe people get a little hyped that way. If you haven't read The Value of the Velvet Rope, really great article by Gabby Goldberg and Jordan Odinsky that goes into this a little bit more. So during this first phase, we focused slow and steady, onboarding 100 teams over maybe 2-3 month period so that we can learn from their experience. And here's the approach that we took. So at the beginning, we looked at our waitlist to understand the types of people who are excited about pitch. Were they working at large companies, small companies? What kind of tools were they using? Do they make a lot of presentations to begin with? Based on that, we formed a hypothesis on the types of users based on tools, habits, roles that could be a really good fit for pitch, especially this early in our life cycle. We created then an invite group, thinking that 70% of the people we invite should fit this best fit hypothesis, and 30% would be slightly outside of that, just to understand, is there a difference in those behaviors? Are we being too restrictive early? Are there other learnings that we can extract and apply later on? We then put together an onboarding guide based around user survey results. So there was a general script. Here are the things in the product we think we should be talking about. Here's how we want to talk about them, but then also leaving space to tailor the demo based on what we've learned about users, and leaving my space, of course, to ask additional questions to open up that therapy session and learn a little bit more about their needs, their habits, their ambitions. And finally, we invited waitlist members to personal onboardings, and we did so many onboardings that the Zoom chose to only take really unflattering screenshots of my face, which I appreciate. We, over the course of this and the next phase, I think we have about 350 personal onboardings that are recorded, transcribed, and then analyzed and tagged. We made sure, using our Typeform information to personalize these or these onboardings as much as possible. Again, making sure that each conversation, each session is relevant and meaningful, and set that person up with a clear plan for success for how they and their team could start using Pitch. Building on the reciprocity rule, we also did a few things that we knew couldn't scale long-term, but that we thought were really important for building rapport and reducing barriers to adoption. For instance, a selection of our users received personally designed templates for their brands, thanks to our template designer T. And when we found out that custom fonts were extremely important to our early users, we called in favors to our fabulous engineering team to work through the back end to upload custom fonts on users' behalf. We knew we wanted to be able to build these things into the product long-term through custom font load, through presentation importers. But we saw some value of doing these things early and helping build those personal relationships, showing people that we were willing to go the extra mile so that they felt like they could do their real world work in Pitch. The benefits here is that in developing these relationships, in going this extra mile for users, it became a lot easier to ask for follow-up feedback and to get additional insights into what was or wasn't working in Pitch. At the end of this beta, or at the end of this phase, we had a clear idea of the types of users that were good candidates for our product, the key selling points based on the current state of Pitch, what we needed to prioritize from a product standpoint moving forward, as well as from a product education standpoint, and the concepts that we really needed to focus on educating new users early on, and then starting to identify some of our initial advocates that we could call on to review early product prototypes or designs, give feedback on education materials we were developing, and just help us better hone in on who we thought would be our most successful users early on. I think the benefit here, so some context, at this early point, I was one of 2 marketers, and there was maybe 1 or 2 community support team members. So, we didn't have the resources at that time to put the effort into a lot of onboarding materials that we were going. So we look at that initial investment in having these personal conversations, getting deep into understanding and seeing people react to the product first time. We were able to, then be more efficient in putting together these education materials, knowing that they would, really make a difference for these new users. Pitch, it's presentation software. It's meant to combine the familiar and delightful. There's some things that all presentation software needs to have. There's some things that we want to do that are different and innovative. But generally, we knew that we ultimately needed users to be able to self-onboard. So as we started to move into the next phase, we wanted to experiment with some self-service onboardings to test Pitch's ease of use, test our onboarding materials, to see if ultimately we'd be able to scale beyond the personal one-on-ones. With this phase, again, we created our invite group with the 70-30 thinking. We updated our script, tightening things in some areas, expanding in others, based on what we learned from the previous phase. We also, worked to restructure things. There was more space to dig into their individual challenges or their team challenges, and just understand ultimately what they would want Pitch to be for them long term. We changed outreach this time around, trying to either schedule a personal onboarding, so the path we'd taken for phase 1, or leading with an open-ended question based on something we learned from their survey, or just sharing an immediate link to sign up for pitch. It was really interesting. We didn't continue with the emails long term, naturally, but during that period, we found that even with simple open-ended questions, users would write a lot, or potential users would write a lot, telling us really detailed thoughts about their current challenges and kind of envisioning how pitch would rise to help them overcome those challenges. And it became a really tremendous source of insights, and it was just really incredible seeing how people could be so generous with their time and so thoughtful in their idea of what we were building. Since we had fewer upfront conversations at this phase, we started putting more emphasis on the check-in survey. So the standard product market fit survey, many of you are probably familiar with, to understand their early thoughts of pitch and get hopefully more detailed insights on how they perceived certain features or certain features that they found that they really needed. Again, I'm sure most of these questions look very familiar. Unlike our waitlist survey, where most of those were multiple choice, most of the questions in this phase were open-ended, giving users as much space to write as they needed to share their thoughts. This really was insightful in terms of understanding how they perceived the benefits of the product in their own words, how they understood or didn't understand feature names. And as a marketer, it became an amazing source of insight for really starting to understand and adopt the language of our users. So based on the insights from this phase, we had a baseline for product market fit. We were able to develop our core user archetypes and understand the features and benefits most relevant to them. Had a clearer understanding of primary blockers to adoption now that the product is more mature, and started to be able to mobilize our early advocates into a thriving community and starting to introduce them to each other. Let's probably speed up ahead. I'm not going to take you through every single phase. As we got closer to launch, we moved to fully self-service, but still made time for one-on-one connections through selective personal onboardings for users having trouble getting started, or interacting with people through our online community, support interactions, and feedback calls. And here we go. We launched. By the time we were launch ready, we were able to tap into the full 6 principles of influence here to engage with our early users, promote our advocates, and to get them excited about what we were building. So once we had more users who were really committed to pitch, really invested in our success, we were able to play more into the ideas of social proof and authority, helping trusted experts talk about pitch online, participating in conversations with them, and monitoring how those interactions involved with the new users that would join as a result of seeing their thoughts. Which brings us to today, to this very moment. So, based on this beta, we were able to develop a clear sense, and based on, the tactics we took in investing in relationships with users, in analyzing them and applying that to our marketing strategy, our product strategy, our support strategy. We had a really clear idea now of who we're building pitch for, the work we need to do today, need to do in the future to engage, educate, and delight them. So what can you learn from this? I think, the best way to get to know someone is by asking questions. Not a tremendous insight, but again, we went in not trying to assume what people needed or assume what people would be pitch's ultimate users, but rather, asking questions, looking at patterns, and then asking more questions all the way, and continuing to iterate on our approach based on what we were learning, based on what people were telling us. Taking the time to learn firsthand, and to that approach too, like reacting to what we learn from people and taking this time to learn firsthand means you can scale more confidently and effectively the things that we took the time to learn by one-on-one conversations or by doing manually for users. It helped us be more effective on the product side when developing future features. It helped us be more effective on the product marketing side when understanding how do we best talk about the product to people, how do we best educate people on new features. And then finally, don't be afraid to be an influencer. Relationships are ultimately about persuading people, whether it feels like an overt act of persuasion or if it's just building on shared affinity and continuing to drive that relationship forward. So I'd encourage you to consider ways that you can include the principles of influence in your way to building meaningful connections. Just thinking about, the ways you can build advocacy, the ways you can help people feel that there's value in continuing to engage with you. I think finish with a little bit of extra time if we
Yes, that was fantastic. Thank you so much, Kate. And we actually, it's been amazing to see in the Q&A, we have some fellow product marketers who have some really great questions, and I'm sure would love some advice as one product marketer to another. So the first is from Abby. She's a PMM at Cord, and her question is, were you using a CRM during these early conversations, and when did you switch over?
Great question, Abby. And I think I owe you an answer from the last session about one-to-many. I will find a way to follow up with you. We weren't using a CRM. We actually still don't have a CRM. We're hoping to adopt it. I think we use HubSpot in a little bit of a limited capacity, but we're working to figure out a long-term solution, taking recommendations. We actually used Enjoy HQ as kind of the primary tool for centralizing all of our user conversations. So they're a user research tool, but we were able to, you can sync it up with Intercom so that any support inquiries can go there. You can forward emails, you can forward Typeform data, and it creates this unified profile. We were also uploading our Zoom recordings there and had a transcription service, and you're able to take all of that data, create a tagging structure for like positive, negative, indifferent feedback on product areas, features, specific insights related to motivations, blockers, and like organize things in a way that made all of these conversations a little bit more digestible and actionable. So that's sort of, I think, longer term, we would want a CRM to play that role. But that was able to like give us sort of this ongoing context, see how the relationship with a user or a set of user was evolving, to understand when we're reaching out for follow-up conversations, like did they have an active bug open? Are they generally happy with their experience with pitch? Have they been asking for the same thing repeatedly, like maybe from the first onboarding to their first feedback call? So this, helped us be a little bit smarter in our interactions. Nobody likes repeating themselves. And yeah, I think was sort of our proxy or ersatz CRM.
Wonderful. I'm going to +1 Enjoy HQ too. We're big fans of it at Typeform, and it's been really amazing to have a tool that helps us to, almost have this very agile repository of information that we're gathering through all of our customer interviews. The next question comes from another product marketer, Adrian, who's head of product marketing at Vi. Adrian, I hope I pronounced that okay, asks, before launch, did you define success in events or data for each persona, or is there a unified definition of success for new users, something along the lines of shared presentations, invited users?
Yeah, we definitely, again, we set hypotheses based on what we knew we could measure at that time. We'd rolled out, I think, Amplitude a little before our beta started. So we had an idea, like, here's what we hope an active user does. Here are the things that we expect active users to do based on what we believe the values of pitch are. Obviously, there's, creating presentations, using collaboration features, inviting additional users, saving templates. That has evolved. So between each phase of the beta, we take maybe 3 or 4 weeks off to analyze the results, revisit assumptions, try to continue to improve our tooling to support better measurement. And I think by the end, we started to identify like what an activation path sort of looks like. So are you creating a document? Are you creating and saving a presentation style? Are you saving a template? Are you inviting users? We continue to see interesting mixes of people. There's very successful single users in pitch. There's very successful large teams that are highly collaborative. There's large teams with kind of more single user work streams. So I think we're still feeling out the ultimate patterns, but we've started to see, and we've started to, measure our marketing campaigns against, our users taking these sort of key actions. But it was definitely a bit of qualitative, quantitative mix early on when we didn't have a huge set of data to work with.
Great. And we have time for one more question. This one comes from Nadia, and she asks, looking back to your pilot phase, are there things you wished you had done or things you wished you hadn't done, or any surprises that came up in the process?
Oh gosh. Yes. Let me think of a specific one. Gosh, that's such a good question. I wish we would have maybe invest. I don't know. We reacted pretty well to the early learnings. I think. I wish we would have early on, played around a little bit more with the follow-up feedback, or like follow-up survey timing a little bit more. We're in this situation, you're trying to balance first number of survey completes with the value of the information you're getting. And I think in some cases we still started to send things a little too early in a user's life cycle, where like the product feedback isn't always super actionable, or maybe it's a little bit skewed. They like love the brand, they love the idea of the product, but you go and you peek into the user data and you recognize that they weren't so active. Mm-hmm. So you're kind of hesitant to include that into your overall like product market fit score. You don't want it to appear more like a vanity metric than something meaningful. I think in some parts I wish we would have done more personal onboardings. It was a big time commitment up front for the support team and myself, but it was probably the single most valuable thing I've done as a marketer. It was like literally take hundreds of hours to talk about a product, hear people's reactions, hear how people describe it in their own words. I think it easily streamlined the process of any copy I've ever written for pitch. I wish there would have been more time to have more people doing those onboarding calls, because it's also, and I think exposing more people to them as well, because I think there's just such immense value in having one-to-one direct conversations and hearing people's unvarnished feedback on, what the team has built.
Great. Well, it was wonderful having you. I can't wait to start using pitch and building presentations on it. Thank you again, Kate, for back-to-back sessions. Everyone else, we're going to switch gears a little bit. Stay tuned. Next up, we have Rich Divany. He is a former Navy SEAL commander, and he's going to talk a little bit more about the kind of psychology of personality and how he's using Typeform in a really creative and unique way. So just stay tuned. We'll be back on in just a moment. Thanks.